Hey watch friends, today we're going to take a look at a debut offering from a new microbrand. This is the Biotic, and this is their first model, the Formicidae. In case you missed it, we did recently do an unboxing of this model, which this is just a prototype, so the packaging of course is subject to change, but we look at the watch roll, the overarching experience, those kind of things if you want to check that out. As far as the specs, this when it launches will be coming with a 1-year warranty. The case on my calipers measures in at roughly 38.9 millimeters, and that is from the 3 o'clock to the 9 o'clock position, so just under 39 millimeters. The bezel does step down roughly 1 millimeter, and that's coming in at 38 millimeters. The lugs are going to be a strap change friendly 20 millimeters, and the lug to lug is a very size versatile 46.6, so just under 47 millimeters for lug to lug length. The overall thickness is only coming in at 11.7 millimeters, not too bad at all, and that's including this flat sapphire crystal, which will include inner AR as well. This, I should mention, is just a prototype model, so do note there are going to be some changes in the production, and we'll talk about that as we go through the video. Additionally, this will be launching around June of 2022 on Kickstarter, so we have a little bit of time before this launches, but it's great getting an early look. As for the movement, this features a Miyota 9015. If you're not familiar with that movement, it is an automatic movement, has all the features you'd really want in a relatively value-friendly watch proposition. So you're looking at a high beat, it does have a date complication, hacking, hand winding, all of those kind of good features. It's one I personally really like, great reliability, low service, easy to get replaced or serviced if you do need it. Excellent all the way around, one that I'm a fan of. For the water resistance, this has 200 meters or 20 atmospheres of water resistance. As for the weight, size to my 6.5 inch wrist, I'm measuring this one at 151.8 grams, right in the middle weight area. For being a stainless steel, and this is 316L stainless steel all the way around, stainless steel case and everything for this, I think it's right about what you'd expect. Maybe a little bit on the heavy side, but certainly not one that I would call heavy by any means. Alright, now that we have the basic information out of the way, let's go ahead and get a better feel for this watch itself, what dial options will be available, what it's like to live with, those kind of things. First, for the colors. Today we're looking at the brown version, but there will be 3 other ones launching as well. There's a red dial, a gray dial, and a green dial, all of which I think nicely complement this overall field, modified field style watch. As far as the dial characteristics, the thing that you're going to immediately notice is that dial shape. It's what I would describe almost like an upside down plate. It has a flattened area that kind of goes out and tapers down on the exterior before it flattens off right inside of the inner rotating bezel. It's a really neat and unique look to this. Additionally, as for the texture on this, it is going to be a sunburst texture, and it is a somewhat subtle brushing texture to that. And on this brown one, I couldn't help but notice and feel at times, it almost has a distressed look to it. I can't tell if it's the fume application or what it is that's going on, because there isn't actually distressing in the finish. It just gives me that kind of feel and vibe, but I think it really comes down to the shape of the dial, as well as the way that it plays with the light as a result of that in the sunburst application. But it's a very cool accent. Overall, as you can see for the layout, it's a pretty clean and simple layout for this. You're going to have on the exterior perimeter, it does flatten off, and you can see it does have a chapter ring, and that's going to be printed all the way around. On the dial itself, it does just have simple text application, and that is printing at both the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock position. Additionally, I'm sure you noticed it does have a date window at the 6 o'clock. It is framed as far as a printed frame, but it's not actually an applied frame to that one. Additionally, it should be noted, one of the changes for the production model, while this prototype is not loomed, the production one will have a loom date window. Shifting over to the hardware, you'll notice that the hands on this are going to be uniformly brushed, and the minute and hour hand are going to be what I would describe as a pencil shape with loom applied. The second hand has an arrow out on the perimeter tip, and that also does have loom that we'll look at here in just a moment. As for the markers, they are going to be printed all the way around. What's kind of neat though, if you notice at the 12, 3, and 9 position, those actually cut into the dial, which I think that really just adds to the overall depth, to the intrigue, to the allure, and part of what I think makes this dial so cool, which I really do think is the shining aspect or element of this overall watch. The markers at the 12, 3, and 9 are going to be a pentagon shape, And the rest of them, with the exception of a smaller one at the 6 o'clock, which is also a pentagon, are going to be a rectangle shape all the way around the perimeter there. It does have, as you can see, on the chapter ring, it will have individual minute and second marks, so nice, easy legibility there. The lume on this, I found, it's to be a decent application. It has a dual lume applied, and it is going to be superluminova. It is going to be primarily old radium for that superlume coloration, but additionally, it does have accents of BGW9, as you can see here, and that is going to be applied to the bezel, the markers, the handset, and then as we talked about in the production model, that will actually have that on the date wheel as well. So pretty cool touch there. I should additionally note that the minute hand on the production model will actually be shortened. Right now, it comes out to the true tip of the chapter ring. That'll be shortened just a little bit, just to make it easier to tell specifically where it's at on the chapter ring, which I think is a good call. And we'll talk about that more further as well. As for the bezel on this is going to be an inner rotating bezel, and this is actuated using the 9 o'clock crown. As you can see, it is bidirectional, smooth action, and this is going to be screw down for the crown. So you just push that in, turn it there, and it does secure firmly. The rest of the bezel here, first let's talk about this exterior bezel. This exterior bezel is going to be a fixed bezel, and as you can see, it does have a concave shape which tapers up from the case, and I think visually just makes that really nice looking and a great transition to the crystal there from the case. The inner rotating bezel, as we already talked about, it is bidirectional. It does have compass navigation all the way around, so you of course have your cardinal marks, and you can see those in the old radium, and then the BGW9 accent for the remainder of your marks there. But it's a nice difference in touch. We recently looked at another version, and we'll look at that here shortly with a different take on a compass bezel as well. We already talked about the dual lume application. I think that's nice, just something for visual intrigue. Shifting over to the case itself, the case on this is going to be a mix of blasting as well as brushing as its primary textures. The blasting, I think, really complements this well. It's not something that you see every day. The last one that I can recall that I looked at was primarily going to be the RZE with their coated titanium. But this is, I think, a first for me with stainless steel, at least recently, that we have checked out. It's a nice application with the brushing on the main flat surface, but then the blasting here on the side. The case shape, as you can see here, it does have downturn. It's just a nice, clean, flowing line, but what you can't miss is that absolutely gorgeous milling that's on the side. It's kind of like a curved teardrop shape for that, and I think it just accentuates the overall lines of this. It adds so much visual allure, and it really is my favorite feature of this watch as a whole. It's just so gracefully and tastefully done. It's really clean on this, even on this prototype here. You can see the cut lines, very crisp, very distinct throughout there. Great transition, excellent machining. Love that feature. That's really, really cool, and something that is, like I said, my favorite attribute of this overall. I like the dial shape, but I really love this case as well here. Transitioning over to the lugs, you can see we already talked about their downturn. It does have drilled lugs as well, so that's going to make for easier strap change friendliness. We already looked at the brushing on the top of the lugs, and then transitioning over to the 3 o'clock side, you can see this is going to be, with the exception of the crown logo, this is going to be a perfect mirror image. So it's what gives that overall visual symmetry. I realize this is going to be a polarizing shape and concept for a lot of people, but we'll talk about that more as far as the on-wrist characteristics and those kind of things. But I do like the way that makes it very symmetrical as you're checking this piece out overall. Looking at the crowns, these are going to be dual screw-down crowns, and as you can see there, they will have signing on them, and it is going to be a different sign between the two crowns. Both of them are going to be screw down, and as you can see here, the crown shape rather, it actually has flattened off here, so I believe that's an octagon. Yeah, looking at that. So yeah, octagon here for that. It does make for nice, easy. It has milling on there, but it makes for very nice, easy to grip because you have those flat surfaces, so you're not gripping the typical round crown design. The size on this, measured at the flat, is going to be 6.4 millimeters. Measured at the corners is going to be 6.6 millimeters. We already talked about the signing and the screw down, and of course, the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positioning for those. It should be noted on the production model, This is going to be changed. So the crowns are going to be shrunk down slightly in size, which is something that I think is a welcome change there. And additionally, they'll actually change. It's going to have a little bit of a step to it the way it goes overall. And then the way that it integrates into the case, it's already pretty well milled in there, but that's going to be tightened up even slightly to where it's going to be the minimal necessary space just to fit that crown in there for the case. Just really, this is execution, I think, excellent on a prototype especially, but just those attention to detail touches, I think, are very promising for this as to what to expect for the overall. I like that they're putting so much detail into those little kind of elements just to make it feel like a fully done and refined package. Shifting over to the case back, the case back is going to be an exhibition case back. As you can see, it does have sapphire crystal. In this, in case you're wondering about the coloration, it is not just the screen there. That is actually a tinted sapphire. So you can see that obscures slightly, which I think is a good call. Not only because the Miota movement, especially undecorated, is not that pretty of a movement to look at. But that being said, I think it just adds a little bit of intrigue and something that changes that up from just the norm. What really differentiates this one, though, is going to be that graphic logo of the ant, and it looks like reading a map there, and it looks like ready to go on an adventure, which I think is really suited to the overall style of this. So that is something that you don't see very much of, and I think that's a cool touch. The case back itself is going to be screw down, and as you can see here, it is going to be a dual texture that is a combination of blasting as well as radial brushing on the perimeter. Shifting over to the bracelet itself, the bracelet is going to be coming from 20 millimeters at the lugs, and it does taper down to 18 millimeters at the clasp. The overall construction is an H-link design, and what really draws this apart, the couplers that are in between have a blasted finish to this, whereas the bracelet links themselves have a brushed finish. So I think that not only ties together with the case design, as far as the use of finish and texture there, but it also adds some visual allure and some light play to that. And I think it really complements the overall design beyond just the use of texture. I think it fits that field style look very nicely. At the end link, this does have female end links, so you just have a coupler that goes in there, so it doesn't effectively extend your overall lug to lug, which is a nice touch. The bracelet links are going to be retained with screws for nice, easy bracelet adjustments there. If you don't already have one, I do highly recommend picking up a good quality screwdriver. I'll have one linked down in the description if you're looking to pick one up. Additionally, the bracelet is going to be retained with quick release spring bars. That's becoming increasingly common, and that's something I love. Even though this has the drilled lugs on there, still something that I really like having, so that way you don't scratch up the underside of the lugs, and it just makes it easier for on-the-fly changes as well. And then one thing that's a really nice touch is this does actually have something similar to what we've seen on the Zellos. This has a Christopher Ward style or Zello style toolless micro adjustment as well. So you can see you get a full, I'd say, link and a quarter of extra length there for the toolless micro. All you do is just push that button, and then that just slides in and out. Once it's actually open, you can actually just push that in manually as well for that, but then it won't open back up. So that's something functionally, I think that's a great touch there. As for the clasp itself, you can see this is just a basic double pusher and just fold over type design. No fold over keeper. This is going to be full brushing. Does have sign there, and it does have on the exterior perimeter, you can see a chamfer cut that to my eye is just staying consistent with the overall application finish, no polish touch, which I think fits with the overall design for this. I think it would have looked out of character for the overall watch if they had added polishing to that part. All right, so now that we have a better feel for this watch itself, let's go ahead and look at a couple quick comps for this. Just wanted to give an idea both for sizing and just different style execution. Here it is next to a Feynman Fjord. And this is one we looked at previously. You can see very different execution of an inner rotating compass style bezel. Dual crowns have been all the rage this year. Most of them are compressor type layout with the 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. This one, of course, went against the grain there and went with a 3 to 9. But additionally, as far as these two, you can see the flat sapphire crystal versus this one with its box edge. I will say this definitely gets the edge for legibility there by far. Versus that box edge where that can get kind of distorted out towards the perimeter. Additionally, this does have a flat inner rotating bezel, but this gives you an idea as far as size-wise how these two really stack up and compare. Considering the fact that there's a couple millimeter difference, I really don't think visually there's that huge of a contrast between these two. Certainly this looks a little smaller, but not that dramatic. Bringing in an RZE Resolute. This one, it's just one, not only another atypical field type construction. You can see with the markers, that kind of stuff put me a little in mind of each other. Same thing with the color choices that are available. But you can see here, this is just kind of a different execution and take, and that gives you an idea sizing wise as well, comparing this roughly 39 to this roughly 40 millimeter watch. And both of them went with very different approaches, but with unique milling, different case shape, that kind of stuff going on for those two watches. All right, so now that we have all that out of the way, let's go ahead and wrap things up with my personal view of some of the positives, some of the critiques of things that I would like to see change, as well as the overall summary. First, for the positives. The dial on this, I've already talked about this ad nauseum here, but the dial, I think it's very cool. It has a vibrant dial, both the coloration, the overall style, the way it gets that light play with the shape, and I think particularly the shape is really the most unique aspect of that. I think it is a cool touch. I think it's something that will differentiate it from the rest of the collection, and I think is going to appeal to a lot of different buyers out there. The milling on this case, I've already talked about this, but I'm going to revisit it again. Absolutely love it. Can't speak highly enough about that. I think that is so well done. Such a cool touch. Looks very cohesive with the overall design. Fantastic. Just superb on that touch. The finish overall, especially for being a prototype, I think it's well executed, especially at the price point, which this one, price-wise, is coming in at around $400 is where it's anticipated to launch, which I think for the overall specs, for the finishing aspects, for the milling, the overall execution, the Miyota movement, sapphire crystal, all of those kind of things, I think is very reasonably priced. So I think it can definitely go into the pro category as well. I do like the symmetry that you get with having a 3-9 construction. It's nice to look at either side. You get the same overall visual look. So I think that's well done. And then on the wrist, as we saw, this nests extremely nicely with that overall case shape to it. The way that tucks just down into the wrist, I think is a good and versatile size. Yeah, some people might think 39 is a little too small, though it's becoming increasingly popular again. But I really think this is a pretty versatile size, especially for the overall style. And the fact that this is an inner rotating bezel, I think visually makes it a little larger as far as the dial presence. So I think that's great. But there are some critiques. A couple of these, I will note, are already being changed up on the production model, but I do want to note them anyways. The minute hand length. Already talked about that. I would like to see that shorter. I think it covers up just a little bit too much of the chapter ring, and that's something they're doing in the production model. The crowns. I do think that this fits with the overall aesthetic, the anti-antenna, that kind of look for it, but I do think that these could be a little smaller. I have not found them to be bothersome on wrist at all, which is great there. I have not had any hot spots, no issues for that, but I am glad that they're going to change those up slightly. The loom strength, as we saw, it's sufficient. I do definitely think that they could kick up the overall loom application, and I hope that they'll do so on the production model. The dial text, it's simple, it's clean. I think it fits the overall field aesthetic. On this one, I would have liked to have probably seen something a little different, whether it be application of a logo, or alternatively, even just changing those from the white, where it's such a stark contrast against this brown, to possibly going with like the old radium coloration, so giving more of like an antique or distressed, I think would just fit the overall aesthetic of the watch a little better, but it's a pretty minor thing. And then finally, and the biggest, is the dial, or the overall layout rather, I do think is going to be polarizing, particularly the 3-9 crown. Either you're going to like it or you're not. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. I wouldn't be worried about it from a functional aspect, but if you don't like the aesthetic, it's not going to appeal to you. So that one's kind of a given, but it's one that I wanted to mention. All right, so where does that leave us for the summary? Overall, especially for being a debut offering from the company, I think they're coming out strong. This one, I think, is very well done. I think the overall, from what I've seen on this prototype, with the finishing, the execution, the layout, the design concept, I think it's been a well done watch. So this is one that I think, if the overall style appeals to you, if you've liked what you've seen throughout this review, I really don't think you can go wrong jumping on this Kickstarter at $400 when this comes out. And as I mentioned, this is anticipated to be around June of 2022. So I hope this video has been helpful for you in kind of bringing you this new one, as well as the time gets closer and you're thinking about whether or not to back. If you did enjoy this, please do hit that like button. And additionally, and most importantly, if you haven't done so already, please do smash that subscribe button. Helps out the channel tremendously and is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.